The girl suddenly felt that death was approaching.
Vous pouvez ouvrir, faut que je sorte.
Non, non, personne ne descend là.
S'il vous plaît, ouvrez la porte pour sortir. Mais arrêtez-moi.
In the end, no one on the whole school bus survived. But 4 years later, the little girl actually came back to life. Then, the deceased in the small town over the past century came back to life one after another. But this wasn't a gift from God, but the beginning of destruction. Shortly after the school bus accident, such sad news broke countless families. Camille's parents divorced because of this. Mother Claire cried all day long and often stared blankly at her daughter's portrait, while Father Jerome found a new lover and indulged in a life of debauchery all day long. But one day 4 years later, Camille crawled out from under a bridge hole, with no traces of the car accident on her body, as if everything before was just a dream. Her memory was still stuck 4 years ago, so she went back to her residence with ease, but along with her footsteps, strange things gradually came to this small town, as Camille kept moving forward. The lights in the town gradually went out, and soon after, it was completely plunged into darkness. But Camille didn't seem to notice anything unusual. At the same time, Mother Claire was tidying up the room at home. She suddenly heard some strange noises coming from downstairs. Claire thought it was her eldest daughter Lena, who had come back, so she just went downstairs to remind her to keep her voice down. But when Claire came downstairs, she didn't see her eldest daughter at all. Instead, a little girl was rummaging through her refrigerator. Claire became alert right away. As the girl showed her face, Claire froze immediately. She recognized that it was her youngest daughter Camille, who had been dead for many years. The other person seemed completely unaware that she was dead. Seeing her mother standing there in a daze, she greeted her directly and explained with a worried look that she came back late because of an accident. Then, without waiting for her mother to say more, Camille quickly slipped upstairs, washed up and prepared to rest. Claire couldn't believe that her daughter had come back to life. She thought it was all an illusion caused by missing her. It wasn't until Claire followed her upstairs and heard the sound of water in the bathroom that she finally convinced herself that it wasn't an illusion. At such shocking news, Claire didn't think much, rushed into her youngest daughter Camille's room, and quickly put away the portrait. Then, she took out her daughter's old clothes and other items, and put them away, trying to prevent Camille from noticing anything wrong. After finishing all this, and personally giving her daughter the change of clothes, Claire finally thought of telling this amazing news to her husband and ex-husband Jerome. She first called her current husband Pierre. He was a community doctor working in a mutual aid association. Because he was busy with work, he didn't answer the phone right away. Claire wasn't annoyed. She then dialed her ex-husband Jerome's phone. Although Jerome was full of doubts, he still came to Claire's house and shouted Lena's name loudly, but he heard Camille's response. At this point, even Jerome was confused. He quickly opened the door and indeed saw his daughter, who had been dead for 4 years. Jerome couldn't stay calm. Not long after, current husband Pierre also returned home, and saw his ex-wife's daughter who had been dead for many years. He was equally shocked. Pierre forced himself to stay calm, believing that this matter should not be made public, and even suggested not letting Camille know the truth. But in order to find out what exactly happened, Pierre, as a doctor, asked Camille about the car accident. But Camille seemed to have no memory of the school bus trip at all. The only clear memory in her mind was waking up under the bridge, and she couldn't provide any other clues. The three were very disappointed, but it was within their acceptance. After all, coming back from the dead was really too bizarre, and no one would be surprised by any situation that arose. The three could only first put Camille to sleep, then go downstairs to discuss the matter in the long run. At this point, the eldest daughter Lena came back from outside. As usual, she went back to her room to turn off the lights and go to sleep, but heard a sound of knocking on the wall from the next room. She was immediately very shocked, because this rhythm was the secret signal agreed upon with her sister. Lena came to the wall in doubt, and replied with the signal as agreed. The next second, her door was suddenly opened, and then her sister Camille appeared in front of Lena. Lena was scared out of her wits in an instant. At the same time, sister Camille also screamed. The three people downstairs hurried upstairs to check, and realized that Camille had found out the truth. Lena was amazed at her sister's resurrection, while Camille was shocked by her sister's sudden growth, which led to the exposure of the matter. Helpless, everyone had to tell the truth. At the same time, similar strange things were happening on the other side of the town. The town doctor Julie received a request for help from an old man named Coster, who claimed to be unwell, and hoped she could come over to check. Julie didn't think much and hurried out for a house call. After hanging up the phone, on the way, she accidentally saw a mysterious man lingering near her home, who didn't seem to be a good person. Julie didn't intend to pay attention to that man, but she didn't expect that after she left, the man came to her residence, and kept calling a person named Adele. The neighbor next door came out to check after hearing the noise, and clearly said that there was no one named Adele here. The man's face was full of confusion and disappointment, but he didn't do anything else, just turned around and left. Julie came to Old Man Coster's house and saw that he was a little restless, guessing that it was a heart problem. While she was checking, a strange noise suddenly came from the next room. Julie was puzzled right away, thinking that a thief had broken in, because Coster's wife had died more than 20 years ago, and he had been living alone since then. Just as Julie was about to get up to check, Old Man Coster stopped her excitedly, claiming that Julie must have heard wrong. Then, before Julie could finish the check, Old Man Coster ordered her to leave. Although Julie was full of doubts, she didn't dare to stimulate the old man, and could only leave as he requested. After seeing Julie off, Coster slowly got up and walked towards the direction of the sound. It was the kitchen, where a middle-aged woman was sitting and eating. If anyone had seen a photo of Coster's late wife, they would recognize right away that this woman was his wife, who had been dead for many years. Like Camille, time had left no traces on her, as if the past 20 years had been just a dream. On the other side, Julie, who had been chased away by Coster, was taking a bus back to her residence. At some point, a little boy had appeared beside her, just like 4 years ago when he suddenly appeared in front of the school bus. What was even more strange later was that the boy seemed to have taken a fancy to Julie. No matter where she went, the boy would quietly appear nearby. When Julie got home, she saw that the boy was still following closely, even coming onto the lawn. Julie finally couldn't stand it anymore, and was about to go over to ask where the boy was from, when the doorbell suddenly rang. When she opened the door, she was shocked to find that the boy was standing at her door. Although Julie found it a bit incredible, she didn't think much of it. She thought the boy was lost and wanted her help, so she took him in temporarily. But no matter how Julie asked, the boy remained silent, as if he couldn't understand her language at all. Helpless, Julie planned to go to the police station the next day, to check if any family had a missing child recently. At the same time, in Old Man Coster's house, he took out all his cherished photos, poured gasoline on them, and set them all on fire. Watching these burning photos, a woman's shout came from behind Coster. It was his wife, but Coster thought it was all an illusion caused by missing his wife too much, and he decided to follow his wife. Not long after, the whole building was engulfed in raging flames. When the firefighters arrived, Coster was no longer in the room. After being persuaded to leave by the neighbors, the mysterious man continued to search for someone named Adele. The man came to the town's bar, and tried to find out about Adele's whereabouts from the waitress Lucy. It turned out that the mysterious man was named Simon, and he seemed to be a revived person too. At this point, Lena suddenly appeared beside them, claiming that she knew where Adele was. Then Lena took Simon to a certain house, saying that this was Adele's residence. Simon couldn't wait to walk to the window, and sure enough, he saw Adele dressing up. But Adele had already married someone else. Seeing Adele's figure, Simon's heart was filled with mixed emotions, because many years ago, he was Adele's lover. They were engaged at that time. But Simon died for some reason, and now 10 years had passed since he woke up again. At this point, Adele seemed to catch a glimpse of Simon, but she thought it was an illusion. After all, Simon had died 10 years ago. But the next second, the doorbell rang suddenly, and then Simon's call came from outside the door. Adele walked towards the door in disbelief, feeling flustered, guessing that she was in some kind of illusion, and couldn't help but be very torn. Simon heard Adele's call, but didn't wait for her to open the door. He thought she had forgotten him, so he turned around and left in low spirits. The next day, Simon wandered to the cemetery in a daze. Looking at his tombstone, especially the date on it, he felt 1,000 emotions. The confused Simon stopped thinking too much. He walked into a restaurant and planned to eat something. After all, he hadn't had a drop of water or a bite of food since he was revived. But when ordering, he found that he had no money with him. Penniless, Simon was sneered at by the waiter, who then tried to drive him away. Simon, who was very depressed, was completely enraged by the waiter. This incident attracted the attention of the police. If it were just a simple fight, it would never have caused such a big stir. But everything was just too coincidental. A murder occurred under the bridge last night, and the victim was the waitress Lucy. After investigation, the police found that the two had a conflict, and Lucy was killed shortly after, so it was no surprise that Simon became a key suspect in the eyes of the police. While the police were busy investigating Simon, Julie, who had picked up the boy, hurried to the police station to ask if there had been any child abduction cases recently, but the police station was so busy with Lucy's case that they had no time for Julie's matter. It turned out that Simon's case was linked to a murder case 7 years ago. According to records, the way Lucy was killed this time was exactly the same as that of the murderer 7 years ago. The victim had multiple stab wounds in the abdomen, and some internal organs were missing. For this reason, the police urgently summoned Tony, the bar owner, not only because he was the boss of the deceased, but also because he was the one who called the police 7 years ago. It wasn't long before the bar owner arrived at the police station when he heard that the case was exactly the same as 7 years ago. Tony's expression obviously changed a little, but he didn't say much, just perfunctorily said a few words and left the police station. After coming out, Tony didn't return to the pub right away. Instead, he hurried to his own farm and searched for something in a flustered manner. The next second, he found a dead wolf in the farm's warehouse. Surprisingly, the wolf came back to life in the blink of an eye. Luckily, Tony was prepared in advance. Just as Tony was about to bury the body, he suddenly heard footsteps approaching from behind. Tony first knocked the man unconscious with a shovel. At this time, Tony found that the man was actually his younger brother Cyril. Tony couldn't believe it at all, because his younger brother had died 7 years ago, and he had buried him with his own hands. The boss was filled with doubts and fears, thinking it was just an illusion. He hurried back to the house and kept praying. At this time, his younger brother had also woken up, frantically patting the door outside and constantly calling Tony's name. But in the face of such a strange situation, Tony didn't dare to go and open the door at all. After an unknown period of time, the noise outside the door disappeared. Only then did Tony dare to carefully open the door, to check the situation outside. When Tony woke up again, he saw his younger brother Cyril pointing a gun at him, pressing him to explain why he had attacked him. Staring at the dark muzzle of the gun, the boss had to tell his brother the fact that he was already dead. At the same time, even though Simon knew he had been dead for many years, he still couldn't let go of Adele in his heart. Hoping to rekindle their past relationship, Simon found Lena, who told him that Adele now worked at the library. Simon hurried there without delay. Not long after he left, Lena accidentally came across a photo, which was a group photo of her, Simon, and Adele. Taken many years ago. At this point, Lena finally recalled Simon's identity and realized that Simon, like her sister Camille, was a revived monster. On the other side, Simon had no idea that his identity had been discovered. His heart was full of thoughts of Adele at this point. When Simon saw Adele at the library, Adele wasn't surprised to see him again. She thought it was just her illusion, just like many years ago. At this time, Adele recalled the priest's guidance again. She decided to let go of her obsession, so she took the initiative to face Simon, pouring out her reluctance while telling herself to be strong, and face the rest of her life alone. But just then, a team of police suddenly broke into the library. Before Adele could react, they took Simon into custody and led him away. It turned out that not long before, Simon's whereabouts had been captured by surveillance cameras. On his way to the library, coincidentally, through investigation, the police found that Simon had been recorded as dead for 10 years in the files. This shocking news attracted the attention of Sheriff Thomas right away. Why would a dead man reappear? He then checked Simon's file himself and learned that Simon was heading to the library, so Sheriff Thomas decisively ordered his arrest. It turned out that the sheriff was Adele's husband. He was very worried that Simon's appearance would take his wife away, so he decided to strike first. In this way, Simon was taken back to the police station and detained. On the other hand, because the town doctor Julie couldn't find out the identity of the mysterious boy, she couldn't bear to see him living on the street, so she temporarily adopted him and named him Victor. After dealing with this matter, Julie was invited to attend the funeral of Old Man Coster. During this time, she accidentally heard about Lucy being killed in the tunnel, and Julie recalled some bad past events, because she was the victim 7 years ago. At that time, Julie had just attended a party and was returning to her residence alone, but when passing through the tunnel, she was attacked by a strange man. Luckily, Tony reported the case in time, and the seriously injured Julie was rushed to the hospital. After a rescue effort, she barely managed to save her life. But since then, this incident has become a lingering nightmare in her heart. As expected, Julie, as an eyewitness to the original case, was once again invited by the police to cooperate with the investigation. The police officer who came was precisely Julie's best friend, Laura. Faced with her best friend's questions, Julie was very resistant, as if she didn't want to recall that past at all. Laura could only keep encouraging her. The two were talking so loudly that they attracted the attention of Julie's neighbor. When the neighbor saw the police coming to the door, he even thought that Julie was being investigated by the police for abducting a boy. So after police officer Laura left, the neighbor came to Julie's door and kept mocking and disdainful of her. Julie was too lazy to argue with the neighbor. She still had many things to do, so she simply settled the boy Victor and went out alone. But not long after Julie left, Victor left the residence without permission. Then he knocked on the neighbor's door, and the neighbor didn't think much and took Victor into the house. When Julie returned and saw that Victor had mysteriously disappeared, she began to search anxiously everywhere right away. But at this point, a noise suddenly came from downstairs. Julie picked up a pair of scissors and walked downstairs cautiously to check. But Julie actually saw the mysterious man who attacked her 7 years ago. Before Julie could react, the mysterious man launched another fatal attack on her. In the nick of time, everything around suddenly distorted, and then the mysterious man disappeared. replaced by the childish face of the boy Victor. Julie didn't know if everything just now was an illusion or something else, but luckily, the danger had passed. Julie even thought that Victor had appeared in time to save her. On the other side, after Lena discovered Simon's secret, she went to Adele to ask what was going on right away. Adele then belatedly realized that the Simon she had seen before wasn't an illusion. Faced with her fiancé who reappeared after 10 years, Adele didn't know what to do. She didn't answer Lena's question, but went back to her residence alone, wondering what to think. At the same time, Simon, who had been arrested by the police, was actually bailed out, and what was even more strange was that the person who bailed him was Camille's stepfather, Pierre. From their conversation, it was learned that Pierre knew about Camille's resurrection, so he bailed him out of the police station in the name of the Mutual Aid Association, and then planned to send Simon to the Mutual Aid Association, perhaps to find out the details about resurrection. But on the way to the Mutual Aid Association, Simon forced to get off the car. After getting rid of Pierre, Simon found Adele that night, wanting to rekindle their past relationship. Adele, who knew the truth, rekindled her feelings, and the two got back together like this. After searching all night, Julie still couldn't find Victor's whereabouts, but early the next morning, she suddenly heard a scream from next door. Julie hurried over to check, but was completely shocked by the scene in front of her. The neighbor had been brutally murdered. On the other side, Lena still couldn't accept the fact that her sister had come back to life, and there were always many misgivings in her heart. She thought that the current sister wasn't her real sister, so she was unwilling to interact with her too much. She ran to the bar to drown her sorrows in alcohol, but she didn't expect her sister to follow her. But she didn't take the initiative to come over to talk to Lena, but fixed her eyes on a man next to her. This man was named Fick, who was once the secret crush of Lena. Perhaps stimulated by Camille's behavior, Lena couldn't help but fly into a rage, and had a big quarrel with her sister. The relationship between the two sisters became increasingly bad. At this time, the parents at home still didn't know about the conflict between the two sisters. They were discussing how to cover up the fact that their daughter had come back to life. After all, such a thing was too bizarre and would inevitably arouse jealousy. To ensure the child's safety, Mother Claire decided to move to a new environment, but Camille firmly opposed it, and she refused to reveal the reason. Just as Claire was about to persuade her again, Lena suddenly fell down the stairs, leaving a deep wound on her back. Claire hurriedly sent Lena to the hospital. With the doctor's efforts, Lena wasn't seriously injured. While she was resting, Camille began to play tricks. She took the opportunity to get close to Fick. It turned out that Camille had also been secretly in love with Fick, but during the 4 years she was dead, things had changed a lot. Fick had officially established a relationship with Lena, perhaps out of unwillingness in her heart, or for other reasons. Camille often asked Fick out to the bar as her cousin, while her sister was in the hospital, but Fick firmly refused, clearly saying that his heart only belonged to Lena. Camille had no choice. At the same time, Lena seemed to feel something. She endured the pain from the wound on her back, hurriedly put on her clothes, escaped from the hospital and went straight to the bar. Seeing that Camille was seducing her boyfriend, Lena resolutely spoke out to stop her. Then Lena revealed Camille's true identity to everyone, but the people present didn't believe her at all. Instead, they thought she was mentally disturbed. Seeing that no one believed her, Lena turned around and left in sorrow. On her way back, Lena happened to pass through that murder tunnel, and just then the wound on her back worsened. Severe pain and physical weakness made her faint in the tunnel. Before Lena lost consciousness, she vaguely saw a man walking towards her not far away, but there was nothing she could do. At the same time, after receiving the report, Laura, Julie's best friend, went to Julie's neighbor's house to investigate right away. Based on the appearance of the deceased, Laura first suspected that it was the same murderer who killed the waitress Lucy, but after a careful investigation, Laura found that there were no external factors at the neighbor's death scene, and it was totally her own choice. This puzzled them both. Why would the neighbor suddenly commit suicide? At this point, Julie saw Victor's graffiti and was immediately shocked by its content. Not only was the content terrifying and bloody, but one of the paintings was exactly the same as the neighbor's death scene. At this point, even Julie realized that Victor was definitely not simple. Julie decided to send the child to the Mutual Aid Association first, and then decide whether to continue adopting him. After finding out the truth, on the other side, in Sheriff Thomas's house, after sending her husband and daughter away, his wife Adele quietly came to the attic with some food. Simon, who had been waiting for a long time, hurried forward. It turned out that Adele had hidden her lover here, but Simon was very disgusted with the current situation, so he put forward a bold proposal to elope with Adele and start over in a place where no one knew them. But what Simon didn't expect was that these words were heard by Sheriff Thomas. It turned out that since Simon suddenly appeared, Thomas had had a bad premonition. For Adele's safety, Thomas installed monitoring equipment at home. Now that he heard Simon's words, he realized that he could no longer remain silent. That night, Sheriff Thomas returned home and said that he wouldn't stop Adele from leaving, but she needed to think it through. Then Thomas told Adele the truth about Simon's death. 10 years ago, Adele was pregnant with Simon's child, but after hearing the news, Simon couldn't accept it at all, and decided to abandon Adele and the child, but he even chose to end his own life. This cruel truth hit Adele hard, and she decided to completely cut off ties with the scumbag. On the other side, the unconscious Lena finally woke up. At this time, she was surprised to find that she was in a house, and next to her was Cyril, who had returned from the dead. Before Lena could open her mouth to thank him, his brother, the tavern owner Tony, happened to return. Cyril didn't seem to want his brother to know about Lena, so he hurriedly closed the door and tried every means to send his brother away. Tony was already ready to leave, but unexpectedly, at this point, Lena suddenly got out of bed, but fell to the ground because of her wound. Hearing the abnormal noise in the room, Cyril saw that things were about to be exposed, so he made up an excuse right away.
C'est maman?
When Tony heard the news that his mother had come back to life, he turned and left with a grim expression, seemingly not wanting to have anything to do with her at all. Cyril finally breathed a sigh of relief after managing to fool his brother into leaving, but because of Lena's disappearance, stepfather Pierre and others were anxiously searching everywhere. At this point, he received another bad news. Victor, who had been sent to the Mutual Aid Association early that morning, had suddenly disappeared, and so had Coster's revived wife. Hearing this, Pierre became nervous right away. He was worried that the revived Simon would also disappear inexplicably. So Pierre quickly took him back to his home to protect him together with Camille. In addition, Pierre also tried to ask if the two had any clues to find those revived people, but Camille and Simon didn't know either. Moreover, Pierre's protection made Simon feel very annoyed. He didn't know that Adele had made up her mind to cut off relations with him, so he was full of fantasies about eloping with Adele. After learning about Simon's thoughts, Camille decided to help him elope with his lover. She took the opportunity to leave her residence, found Adele, and told her about Simon's plan to leave, but Adele firmly refused Camille. On the other side, news of the disappearance of the boy Victor also reached Julie. She hurried to the police station, only to be told that only Coster's wife had been found. Julie recognized her identity at a glance and was very shocked, because she clearly remembered that Coster's wife had died decades ago. She took the initiative to approach her and asked what was going on, but Coster's wife remained silent all the time, and only revealed a little information about Victor in the end.
Vous inquiétez pas pour lui. Il reviendra vous voir quand il aura fait ce qu'il avait à faire.
Such inexplicable words made everyone present even more confused. At the same time, Victor actually went back to the Mutual Aid Association again, this time, but he found Pierre. From their conversation, it could be learned that Pierre and his companions had killed the young Victor 35 years ago, and now he had come back for revenge. Pierre expressed remorse for his past crime, and hoped that Victor would let him go. But in the next second, the whole town was plunged into darkness again. Right after, the companion who was with Pierre back then, suddenly appeared in front of him, but this time, the target he wanted to kill was Pierre. Pierre was startled and instinctively waved his hand to resist, accidentally knocking the weapon out of the other's hand. Pierre grappled with him right away, but at this point, Julie and her best friend Laura arrived here following Victor's trail. Julie hugged Victor tightly, while Laura vigilantly observed her surroundings. But apart from the terrified Pierre, there was no sign of anyone else around, as if the person who wanted to kill Pierre just now was just an illusion of his. On the other side, Lena fell into a coma again because of the fall. When she woke up this time, she saw Cyril applying medicine to her. His expression was a bit strange, but Lena didn't think much of it. After applying the medicine, Cyril hurriedly left the room. He had an inexplicable bloodthirsty desire in his heart, and he almost couldn't restrain himself when he saw Lena just now. So after leaving the room, Cyril picked up his shotgun right away and went hunting, but his blood-soaked appearance was just seen by his brother Tony, who was coming back. Tony flew into a rage immediately and severely questioned Cyril whether he had committed a crime again. It turned out that Cyril was the one who attacked Julie 7 years ago. His brother Tony found out in time, and hurriedly sent Julie to the hospital. Tony was very angry with his younger brother. To prevent him from hurting others again, Tony even knocked Cyril unconscious, then took him back to the farm and buried him alive. This is why he reacted so violently when he saw Cyril come back to life. On the other side, Simon, who had been waiting for Adele for a long time, was deeply disappointed. He couldn't understand why Adele had suddenly changed her mind, so he took the initiative to go to her to argue. Faced with Simon's questioning, Adele didn't say much and just firmly rejected him. As Simon left in a daze, he happened to bump into Sheriff Thomas, who was returning to his residence. Thomas mistakenly thought Simon was going to harm his wife, so he shot and killed him without hesitation. Thus, Simon, who had returned from the Dead, died again. Another incident happened that night. Lena's boyfriend Fick had always felt that something was wrong with Camille in their previous interactions. She seemed very familiar. He became more and more suspicious that she was actually Lena's biological sister, not her cousin. To prove his guess, he took a companion and sneaked to Camille's grave, resolutely waving a shovel to dig. But when he opened the coffin lid, he found only stagnant water inside with no body. Fick's heart skipped a beat. His guess was confirmed. Just as Fick was about to leave with his companion, they were caught by the elderly gravekeeper, and both were taken to the police station. At this time, something strange also happened in the hospital. Lucy, the tavern waitress who had been confirmed dead, woke up in the hospital, presumably affected by the mysterious resurrection force. The doctor was shocked by such a bizarre scene. In the next few days, Lucy seemed to really come back to life. Not only did her bodily functions gradually recover, but her wounds completely healed in just a few days, and even the missing internal organs miraculously grew back. The police station sent someone to question her right away, mainly to find out the face of the attacker who assaulted Lucy. Moreover, Sheriff Thomas was very worried that Simon, who had come back from the dead, would revive again, so after throwing his body into the hospital morgue, he specially told the doctor to notify him right away if there was any movement. Only then did Thomas dare to return to the police station. On the way, he happened to bump into the arrested Fick. Learning that Fick was arrested for digging up a grave, Thomas eagerly asked about the whereabouts of the body, but was told that there was no body in the coffin. Thomas realized right away that the girl named Camille also came back to life. Thomas then thought that there might be more such revived people in the town, so he quickly ordered an investigation. At this time, in Camille's home, her mother invited many members of the Mutual Aid Association to help Camille be accepted by the townspeople. These members were all family members of the victims of the school bus incident back then. Claire's original intention was to comfort these people's pain of losing their children through Camille's company, and thus use their influence to make the townspeople accept Camille. But she didn't expect Sheriff Thomas to visit suddenly halfway, asking specifically for Camille. Claire and her husband guessed that Thomas might have known Camille's secret, but they didn't intend to hand over their daughter, so they lied that Camille wasn't at home. Her ex-husband Jerome also tacitly shifted the topic to their missing eldest daughter Lena, asking Sheriff Thomas to help find her. With their cooperation, Thomas had to return to the police station to start investigating Lena's disappearance. At this time, Lena, who was still resting on the farm, suddenly heard a gunshot. It turned out that not long ago, because of Lucy's awakening, the police identified Searle as the culprit right away, and went to the tavern owner Tony with a portrait. Although Tony insisted that his brother had long been dead, the police still found something wrong with Tony from the details. After sending the police away, Tony hurried back to the farm to arrange for his brother to escape. But at this point, the police returned. To protect his brother, Tony openly attacked the police. Searle, worried that Lena would be implicated, hurriedly urged her to leave. Julie finally found the boy Victor. Worried that he would have another accident at the Mutual Aid Association, she decided to take him back to her residence. Julie prepared bath water for him to clean the dirt off his body, but Victor refused. Julie thought the boy was shy and didn't insist, but after Julie left, Victor revealed the real reason. It was clear that resurrection wasn't permanent. Judging from Victor's current condition, he would probably disappear soon. The appearance of Sheriff Thomas made Pierre and others very worried about Camille's safety, so they decided to send Camille to the Mutual Aid Association's stronghold in the mountains to temporarily avoid Thomas's pursuit. Considering that Victor was also a revived person, Pierre found Julie and hoped to take Victor to the Mutual Aid Association for protection together, but because of what had happened before, Julie didn't trust him at all and rejected the proposal. Pierre had to transfer Camille first. She attracted the attention of many Mutual Aid Association members. Because of her resurrection from the dead, many members who had lost their children believed that Camille had the ability to communicate with the dead, so they came to ask about their deceased children. Camille didn't want to make these parents sad, so she made up some white lies, but she didn't expect that these parents would choose to reunite with their children that night. At the same time, there was another commotion in the hospital. Simon miraculously came back to life again, and Lucy in the ward not far from him seemed to sense something, and slowly walked out of the ward. The two met in the hospital corridor and left the hospital together. Without any communication, after leaving the hospital, the two went to the bar and had a pleasant chat. Lucy learned about Simon's past and advised him to let go of the past. Simon was very hesitant, because he still had an important thing to do. After leaving the bar, Simon found the priest from back then, hoping that he could help him find answers. He wanted to know the truth about his death. The priest pretended to agree but secretly called the police. Soon the police came and arrested Simon. On the other side, Lena, who had escaped from the farm, got lost in the woods. In a trance, she saw firelight in the depths, and countless mysterious people stood beside the fire, but she didn't pay much attention, and ran all the way home to meet her father Jerome. But after Lena, the Tony brothers, who also escaped from the farm, had an accident when passing by that fire. By this time, the fire had been put out, leaving half of a charred animal corpse inside. At this point, the elder brother Tony suddenly saw the figure of an old woman not far away, who looked very similar to their deceased mother, but in the blink of an eye, the figure disappeared, and Tony thought he was just seeing things. Little did they know that by this time, there were already many revived people all over the mountain. The two brothers managed to escape the woods with great effort, and after that, they only needed to cross the whole reservoir. To escape the police pursuit, the two swam as hard as they could and finally reached the middle, but Tony seemed to be blocked by something, and couldn't move forward anymore. His younger brother Cyril kept encouraging him, but the next second Cyril was suddenly dragged into the water by a mysterious force. Tony disregarded his own safety, and dived into the water to look for him, but Cyril seemed to have completely disappeared without a trace. On the other side, Jerome took Lena to the mountaintop stronghold, and the two sisters reunited. Many past conflicts were resolved at this point. Camille said that she had long since stopped liking Fick, and that she had deliberately approached him, before just to retaliate against her sister for not accepting her. Lena also apologized to her sister, saying she shouldn't have kept her at arm's length, and the two sisters hugged tightly. At this time, Lena noticed many signs of decay on her sister's face, and she had a vague premonition that her sister would leave her again soon, to prevent others from noticing anything unusual. Lena put heavy makeup on her sister's face to completely cover the traces. Just then, Laura arrived at the mountaintop stronghold with Julie, Victor, and Tony. Not long before, Julie had also discovered Victor's festering wounds, and realized that the child was about to leave. Coincidentally, Sheriff Thomas also learned that the boy Victor was a revived person, and ordered Officer Laura to take the child to the police station. Julie begged to take them to the Mutual Aid Association, and unable to resist her best friend's request, Laura brought the two here. On their way here, they also met with a strange incident. At that time, the three of Julie had just driven out of the town, but they found themselves lost on the way to the mountaintop stronghold. Even though a day and a night had passed, the three seemed to be standing still, helpless. Laura had to stop the car, hoping for a good plan the next day. Unexpectedly, when she woke up early the next morning, the rear window was strangely covered with handprints, which made her hair stand on end immediately. Upon questioning, Victor revealed that many people had appeared last night trying to take him away. Julie and the other realized right away that those people were all revived, but they didn't understand what the revived were up to. At this point, Laura caught a glimpse of a figure not far away, about to jump off the bridge to commit suicide. They hurried forward to dissuade, only to find that the person was actually the tavern owner Tony. Through conversation, they learned that not long ago, Tony had been unable to find his brother, and finally left the reservoir alone. He was so sad about losing his brother again, that he wanted to die. During their conversation, Julie accidentally learned that it was Tony who had saved her back then, so she hurriedly thanked him. At this point, the boy Victor suddenly pointed to the distance. Only then did they notice that a large cloud of fog had appeared over the bridge, with countless figures approaching slowly. Frightened by this scene, they could only quickly drive away. But it wasn't long before Laura and Julie stopped the car for some reason. When only Victor and the tavern owner were left in the car, the tavern owner had the idea of suicide again, and this time no one stopped him. When Julie and the other heard the gunshot, Tony was already dying. They hurried to the mountain stronghold to ask everyone to rescue Tony, but because his injuries were too severe, despite their efforts, they still couldn't save Tony's life. At the same time, a chaos was breaking out in the town. Countless revived people came to the bar, and regarded Lucy as their leader, after which the revived people wreaked havoc on the town. Sheriff Thomas went deep into the bar to investigate, but apart from a revived person enjoying food in the toilet, there was no one else. When the person saw Thomas, he attacked him right away, and Sheriff Thomas shot him dead without hesitation. But Thomas knew that the revived would come back to life again, and the problem must be solved from the root. At this point, Thomas learned that Simon had escaped from prison. He realized right away something was wrong, and hurried back to his residence. And sure enough, Simon was going crazy there. Not long ago, Simon was rescued from prison by Lucy, and went straight to Adele's residence. They kidnapped Adele's daughter, and Simon used this as a threat, hoping that Adele would leave with him. Moreover, from their conversation, it was learned that Adele was actually pregnant with Simon's child again. But Adele no longer trusted Simon, so she firmly refused him. Then Adele fled into the bedroom to hide. Simon was rejected by the other person again. At this point, he was completely crazy, constantly smashing things outside, and happened to bump into Thomas, who was returning, so he was shot dead by Thomas for the second time. The sheriff realized that the town was now very dangerous. He also planned to take his wife to the Mutual Aid Association stronghold, on the top of the mountain, but not long after Thomas arrived, he found that the revived had actually chased here. Sheriff Thomas and others stood ready, staring at Lucy, the leader of the revived. The other person told Thomas that they didn't actually want to fight, as long as Thomas and the others agreed to a deal. All the revived would leave right away. Lucy wanted to exchange Adele's daughter for all the revived in the stronghold. Sheriff Thomas agreed without hesitation. It wasn't long before Cost's wife took the initiative to walk out of the stronghold. Julie, seeing that Victor was about to be taken away, actually asked to go with him. Now the revived person left in the stronghold only was Camille. Although her mother Claire couldn't bear it, she had to hand her over, but Claire decided to leave with her daughter. In this way, the 5 people walked towards Lucy under Thomas's leadership. Simon appeared with the girl, but after the exchange was completed, Lucy didn't lead the revived away. She claimed that there was still one person missing. While Thomas looked puzzled, Lucy revealed that Adele was pregnant with Simon's child, so Lucy and the others wanted to take her away with them. Hearing that they actually wanted to take his wife away, Thomas went back on his word right away, and decided to fight to the death with the revived. In this way, Thomas led everyone into a fierce battle with the revived. The people inside the house couldn't see what was happening outside, because of the blockade, and could only hear the continuous gunshots. It was a long time before the iron gate finally opened again. It's just that everyone was very shocked when they saw the scene in front of them. Everyone, including the revived, had disappeared. The town at the foot of the mountain was completely submerged by floodwaters of unknown origin. It seemed that they were the only survivors in the town. The film ends here. The Les Revenants Season 1 was released in November 2012. The film tells the story of the impact of a group of revived people on a small town from multiple perspectives. The idea is very innovative. Some settings in the play are also particularly interesting. For example, these returnees are very hungry, as if they can never get enough to eat, and basically never fall asleep. They aren't clear about the process and cause of their own death, and their memories are very vague. There's also the mysterious drop in the water level of the dam. There are also many bodies of animals that committed suicide underwater. What secrets are hidden behind this? It feels like there's an inextricable connection with these returnees. But after watching the first season, no answer was given, and the screenwriter also left many unsolved mysteries. For example, what special abilities Lucy got after being stabbed? What will happen to Adele's newly conceived child? But it's these mysteries that make everyone full of expectations for the second season. If you like my channel, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe.